It was a challenging year for the Buffalo Bills linebackers in 2024. What's the outlook for 2025? We're breaking that down for you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, folks, welcome in. Talking linebackers on today's podcast. A lot to get into. A year where things were challenging. A lot of changes defensively, injuries to linebackers, some new players emerging, some good development. A lot to get into today. Let's start with Terrell Bernard, 2022 third-round pick, number 89 overall. He's 25 years old, turns 26 in May, entering the last season of his rookie deal, a 4-year, $5 million rookie deal, but the proven performance escalator kicks in for him, and his 2025 salary will be $3.4 million. I mentioned this with James Cook, where for non-first round picks, the last year of the rookie deal, there are incentives that are based on Pro Bowls and playing time that will give players a bump in that fourth season. And as Terrell Bernard has become a starter for this team over the last couple of years, he's reached snap incentives that gives him a jump in that last year of his rookie deal. So obviously that gets us to a little bit of a conversation about a contract extension. He is extension eligible. After 3 seasons in the NFL, players become extension eligible. And so that's where the Bills are at with Terrell Bernard. Spot Rack, one of my favorite resources for salary cap information. They do contract projections. They do a great job. Spot Rack has Terrell Bernard projected for a $6.7 million a year contract, which comes in at 2.4% of the cap. I think that's very low. And now, if you will allow me for a second, I want to, again, get on a soapbox about percentage of cap, and that being the way that we have to start looking at contracts. We went in depth on yesterday's episode talking about Greg Rousseau and what the contract extension estimations are for him and how there might be some sticker shock to the dollar amount. But when you look at it appropriately through percentage of cap and not APY measured against deals that were signed 3 years ago, you're going to have a lot better perspective. The salary cap in the NFL continues to go up. Over the last 2 years, it's going to go up by over $50 million. You cannot talk about contracts that are being signed today and compare them to deals that were signed in 21 or 22. It's not the same story. The cap's going up. We have got to start looking at contracts through the lens of percentage of cap. And we will do that on this podcast, I assure you. And I thought we had a great conversation yesterday about Greg Rousseau. Well, let's do the same thing right now for Terrell Bernard. Spot Rack says $6.7 million a year, which is 2.4% of the salary cap. I think that's very low. If it comes in there, this is a very easy extension to do. When you talk about that 2.4% of cap range, that's like Josie Jewell numbers. And Josie Jewell's like a okay linebacker for the Broncos that got a low-cost deal to go be a starter for the Carolina Panthers. I think that Terrell Bernard is looking at more of a contract that pays him 4% of the cap, which would fall in line with players like Zaire Franklin, Azeez Al-Shaair, Foye Olakun. I think those are his peers to me in the linebacker world. Now, the top guys Fred Warner, he gets 10.4% of cap. Tremaine Edmonds, 8% of cap. Roquan Smith, 8.9% of cap. I think 4% is an appropriate place. I think 2.4% is like a bottom tier starter, like a paid starter, but not one that's, I just think that Terrell Bernard's a better player than that. So if he does get a 4% of the cap deal, that would put him at around $11.2 million a season. I think that's the appropriate range for where the deal will ultimately land. So maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. We'll find out. But I was very surprised to load up Spot Rack and see that's where the market value projection was for him. I think it's a little bit higher. And so that's my expectation for what a contract extension looks like. I think it could be a 4-year, $44 million contract extension. That's kind of where I think it lands. Now let's get into his 2024 review. 13 games, 13 starts. Of course, had the early season injury that kept him out for a little bit. On the field for 87% of snaps, 104 tackles, 5 for loss, 1 sack, 1 interception, 3 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery. I thought 2024 was a challenging year for Terrell Bernard. A lot of new things around him. A new play caller, of course, with Bobby Babich now as the defensive coordinator. Changes around him personnel-wise, especially in the back 7 with a lot of turnover on the roster. Of course, preparing to play the season with Matt Milano as his running mate. Milano goes down in the training camp, and now it's Dorian Williams in that spot again. And I don't think that Terrell Bernard was as impactful in 2024 as he was in 2023. The splash play numbers were way down, tackles for loss way down, ball production way down, and the pressure numbers were especially down. You've heard Brandon Beane talk about one of his favorite traits of a Terrell Bernard is his ability to like blitz and shoot gaps, and I've even said that. I was pretty lukewarm on Terrell Bernard coming out as a prospect, but the one thing that I acknowledge from his college tape is, man, as a gap shooter, as a blitzer, he's really, really good. Well, his pressure numbers were down significantly. In 2023, he had 20 pressures, 6.5 sacks on 74 pass rush snaps. Again, 20 pressures, 6.5 sacks on 74 pass rush snaps. This past season, on 66 pass rush snaps, 10 pressures and 1 sack. It's just wasn't the same type of impact, no matter how you look at it, for Terrell Bernard. And I do think that a lot of that stems from the things I mentioned, instability around him. Even early in the season, week 1, Teron Johnson goes down. All of a sudden it's not the second level of the defense that you anticipated it being. And then Bernard goes down himself. Instability at safety. It was a tough year for this Bills defense. There's no doubt about it. Now, I do think that Terrell Bernard is the established leader of this defense. That's unquestioned. He's a big-time communicator. I don't have any doubts about his ability to get the defense lined up, communicate, understand what the tells and checks are, and make sure everyone's on the same page. I think he's terrific at that. He's a big-time communicator. I think he's a good coverage player. I think he's a good space player. I just think for Terrell Bernard, the downhill ability is just, it falls short for me. I just don't think he's the same type of player that is both good in coverage and space and communication and leadership, but the downhill, the run defense, leaves a lot to be desired for me. I don't think he's a good take-on player. I don't think he's a very consistent processor against the run. Now, look, there are moments where he sees it, he goes, he fires his gun, he makes a big tackle. Like, that happens. The snap-to-snap consistency isn't there for me. Now, look, he's a smaller linebacker. But, okay, I don't think that's necessarily overly prohibitive to being able to sift through contact, play through contact, and make tackles downhill. It's helpful if he's bigger, and I do think you have to make some sort of a concession overall with the profile that he is. But he was a better downhill player last year, right? And I think maybe even some of the decline of the defensive line this past year impacted Terrell Bernard. So I'm just trying to be honest about the whole picture with Terrell Bernard. I overall appreciate him. I think there is a lot of value to what he brings. I think he does the thing that's the hardest to find, which is play in space and playing coverage. I think he does that at a high level, and I value that tremendously. But I'm also willing to tell you that I don't think he's a very effective or consistent player downhill, and I'm hoping to see some growth or at least get back to the level that you showed us in 2023. So in 2025, I want this situation to stabilize. with Terrell Bernard, like, obviously I want to see the splash player that he was in 23, but, on the same page with the play caller, things around him becoming more stable, his own play stabilizing a bit to be the best version of himself in 2025. So I think there's a lot of layers to the Terrell Bernard conversation, and hopefully this was helpful in gaining at least the perspective that I have on him and his role in Buffalo. I think the team's majorly committed to him. I think the Bills love Terrell Bernard. I expect him to be around. But I think there's a overall conversation to have, and hopefully that was insightful for you. All right, we got to talk Matt Milano, of course, Dorian Williams, Balin Spector, Buffalo Joe, Edifon, Eula Focio. We'll get to them all here on the other side of it, folks. Be sure to stick with me. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game more exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk Matt Milano. 2017 fifth-round pick, number 163 overall. He's 29. He turns 30 in March, and he's actually entering year one of his 2-year, $28 million extension. Not a great opportunity to get out of this deal. If that's what you're hoping for me to sit here and tell you that the Bills can get out of this deal and save a bunch of cap space, they can't. Pre-June 1, if the Bills release Matt Milano pre-June 1, they take a $1.4 million cap reduction and have $17.2 million in dead cap. Translation, not happening. They could cut him post-June 1. They would get $6 million in 2025 cap savings, but you also get $9.6 million in dead cap in 2025 and $11 million in 2026 dead cap. That doesn't sound great either. Translation, Matt Milano is a Buffalo Bill in 2025, and I think he'll obviously be in line to start and have the chance to remind us of the player that he was in 2022. All right, so the 2024 stats, 4 games, 4 starts in the regular season, of course, 3 more playoff starts, so 7 total starts for Matt Milano after tearing his bicep in training camp. Played 69% of the defensive snaps in those 4 games, 16 tackles, 1 for loss, 2 fumble recoveries. As far as his review, obviously the parlay of the tibial plateau fracture into a bicep injury, not great, right? It's kept him out till December 1st. He returned against San Francisco, and it's disappointing because the all-pro player that we saw in 2022, like, if you feel like you were robbed of 2 years of prime Matt Milano. Clearly his best season in 2022. He's always been a good player, but in 2022, it's like, oh, wow, you just took a major step. And then the next 2 seasons, he gets injured in week 5 in 23. He gets injured in preseason. That keeps him out to December in 24. I do think that he got better and better throughout the course of getting back on the field. His first 3 games back this year, 49ers was the first game, and then the Rams and the Lions. And I thought that those were rough. But then he really started to look like himself. There was the Jets game. Then there was the Patriots game, Broncos and Ravens. I was like, okay, yeah, Matt Milano's becoming Matt Milano. Impact play, big sack in the AFC Championship game, big pass breakup in the AFC Championship game. Felt like he was becoming more and more himself. And so in 2025, in terms of his outlook, it'd be cool for him to have a full, healthy season. And look, the player that he is, the contract, you need all that to perform. This is an expensive linebacker that's relied upon to be an impact player for this team. Need him to be that, right? And I think he can. I'm not telling you that he will, but I think he can. Am I concerned about another injury? Of course. How could you not be? But let's hope that this, as an asset for the Buffalo Bills in terms of the caliber of player that he's told us he can be and the commitment that the Bills have in terms of cap space, need this to be a performing asset for the Bills after it didn't perform the last 2 years to the level that you were committed to him. So need a healthy Matt Milano. And it, again, based on the ascension late in the season last year, a healthy offseason, it's not, you're not spending this offseason working back from a major injury. It's okay, just do your normal stuff to get ready for a season and go play ball with your normal opportunity to get calloused up. Let's go. I'd love to see Matt Milano a full season of what he is. Let's talk about Dorian Williams, a 2023 third-round pick, number 91 overall. He's 23, turns 24 in June, entering the third year of his rookie contract, a 4-year, $5.6 million rookie contract. In 2024, he played in 17 games, 11 starts on the field for 59% of the defensive snaps, collected 117 tackles. That was the most on the team. Your 2024 leading tackler, Dorian Williams. Remember that for a trivia answer one day. 5 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and 3 fumble recoveries. In 2024, I think that Dorian Williams has a great argument to be the most improved player on the team in terms of what the player was in 23 versus what the player was in 24. I think the most growth of any player on the roster was Dorian Williams. In 2023, his rookie season, struggled, right? Like you watched other teams go after him and expose him and misdirection coverage. It was tough to see. And then I think the best way that you can validate what I'm trying to tell you is that AJ Klein had to come out of retirement and cancel a family vacation to play in the playoffs because Dorian Williams wasn't really a playable player. Then 2024 happened, and you saw just growth across the board. Very, very, very improved. Now, there's still work to do. I still think it's processing, right? There's still another gear. And the best way I could say it is like the game just was fast for him as a rookie, just very fast. Slowed down, right? Slowed down this past season. And the trajectory here is really, really good. And I enjoyed watching Dorian Williams. And even when it was late in the season, even the AFC Championship game, when Matt Milano's playing like every snap, when Dorian Williams would come in 3 linebacker sets or, your goal line defense type stuff, that dude was blowing stuff up. I think that even in situational moments, he flashes. And so when you think about him in 2025, there's not a path for him to start because it's going to be Milano and Bernard. But as LB3, when the Bills do go 3 linebackers, which, there were certainly more of an appetite for it this year. And maybe the fact that you do have those 3 backers, it becomes more inviting. So I expect him to be the LB3, but also, the primary backup to Matt Milano. And then the question that I have for Dorian entering this year, and I'm sure Sean McDermott will be asked about this at some point, is this the year where he really learns that Mike position and can be the first off the bench for both Bernard and Milano? I think that would help increase his value and then, of course, increase his chances of getting on the field. The unfortunate reality with Bernard and Milano is they've been banged up. And so other linebackers are going to play. They're going to start. Be nice to know that Dorian Williams could be first off the bench at either position if that's something that can be on the menu for him this year. So that's something that I'm definitely looking for. All right, let's talk Baylon Spector, 2022 7th-round pick, number 231 overall, 26 years old. He turns 27 in October. He's entering the last year of his rookie deal, 4-year, $3.7 million. In 2024, he played in 11 games with 4 starts. In those 11 games that he was active for, he did play 40% of the defensive snaps, and he is a 4-phase special teamer. So as a depth linebacker, he plays all the special teams units. 40 tackles, 2 for loss, 1.5 sacks, and a fumble recovery this past season. So in 2024, he got a chance to log the first 4 starts of his career in his 3rd season. In his first 2 years combined, he played a total of 37 defensive snaps. That's it. Then he played 291 this year. If you remember, the Bills are out there trying to beat the Baltimore Ravens early in the season with Baylon Spector starting at linebacker. I remember it well. So he did play, which is good for him, but he did struggle. He doesn't look like an answer to me, to be honest with you. I find myself with more exposure to Bale Inspector this year, I get more interested in the two rookies that I'll talk about next, in Joe Andreessen and Edefon Ulafosio. Now, this is going to be a completely made-up stat, but his injury to snap ratio has to be incredibly high. I mean, for the amount of injuries this dude has dealt with in his career versus the amount of injuries that he's had and games that he's missed for just all the time, like very small spurts of time on the field, practice injuries all the time. Availability is the issue. You know, I think that he is an intriguing package of size and athleticism. Thought he had some good moments in college. He's had some decent preseason moments, but can you rely on Bale Inspector? Like, let's just be completely honest. Through 3 seasons, that just has not been the case. So I do think he'll be around in 25. I think the team does like him a lot. There's not a real benefit to move on from him. He is an experienced player in your defense. He does play special teams. But this is probably a situation where you play out the rookie deal and then, you know, all the best, dude. And hopefully he can find some health, you know, because I think that's certainly hasn't helped his development or his trajectory as a player. All right, we got to talk Buffalo Joe, Edefon Ulafosio, and set the tone for the offseason. Folks, we'll do that on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. All right, folks, welcome back. We got a couple more players to get to, and then, you know, tie a ribbon on this entire conversation. Next up is Joe Andreessen. He was a 2024 tryout player that turned a tryout into a contract, an undrafted free agent contract. Pretty cool story. Local, you know, from Western New York, grew up a Bills fan. How cool is it to see him? You saw some pictures of him tailgating, you know, as a teenager growing up. Going to Bills games, and he's got a Matt Milano jersey on. And now this guy's playing next to Matt Milano. That's got to be an unreal situation for him. And one of the things that I really love about his story is how Sean McDermott, at every opportunity, reiterates that he's earned this. This isn't just a PR stint. This isn't just, hey, local kid, you know, played at UB, try out, bring him on the team, let's have a feel-good story. The dude's earned this opportunity. And I think that's a really important layer. And I think he's proven McDermott right whenever he's had chances. Of course, preseason, insanely good preseason. And then even throughout the course of the year, getting some chances to play and, you know, making some splashes. So it's awesome. It's really awesome. He's entering the second year of his 3-year, $2.8 million rookie deal. In 2024, he played in 13 games with 1 start. And in those 13 games, 14% of the defensive snaps, but 71% of the special team snaps. So he's certainly carved out that role for himself. He's collected 26 tackles and 1 for loss. In 2024, obviously, I mentioned a great story all over the place in preseason, makes the team. And then, you know, of course, he's a reserve linebacker that mostly plays special teams, but he did get a lot of opportunity late in the season. Week 17 against the Jets, and then week 18 against the Patriots. He actually started that game. And so of the 115 defensive snaps that he played, 90 came those last 2 weeks of the year, and I thought he performed well. He continued to make those splashes that made you like really enjoy him in the preseason. And you can feel his story in how he plays, right? Didn't even play his entire college career at UB. You know, it's been just a story of just like grinding it out. And now he's at the highest level of football and has an opportunity to play for his favorite team growing up. Like, you could feel that urgency in the way that he plays football. So as for his 2025 outlook, I think obviously continue to be an impact special teamer, you know, take a step there. And then I talked about Dorian Williams as a guy that can be in the mix to be the backup to Terrell Bernard, but I think Joe Andreessen should obviously have something to say about that. Be in competition. Maybe he is the primary backup to Bernard and Williams is the primary backup to Milano. But just continue to go. Continue to add to the story. And, I mean, it's inevitable. Like, opportunities come. Like, everybody gets their chance. And Joe Andreessen is continuing to leverage himself to get opportunities. And then when he gets them, continue to perform, they'll keep coming. And so obviously we'll continue to enjoy his development and root for his success. Last player, Edefwan Ulofosio, a 2024 fifth-round pick, number 160 overall out of Washington. 25 years old, just turned 25 back in January. He'll be entering the second year of his rookie contract, 4 years, $4.3 million. Only played in 4 games as a rookie, 1 start, of course, Week 18 against the Patriots. In those 4 games, he did play 25% of the defensive snaps, 63% of the special team snaps, collected 6 tackles, 1 for loss, and a pass breakup. Look, 2024, he was mostly an inactive player. I think Edefwan Ulofosio was a good college player. Really enjoyed him. Good size, good athleticism. He's a developing depth player for this team. I think he's a more interesting Balin Spector, but I will say that the parallels between Ulofosio and Spector are pretty undeniable. Good college player, really good size, good athleticism, injury history that concerns you, winds up being like a later day 3 pick. And, we'll see what happens. But he's an interesting player to me. I think he's got a tough path because he's behind Andreessen. He's behind Dorian Williams. He's probably behind Balin Spector. So he'll need some help. But stick around, keep learning, maximize your opportunities. Never know what'll happen. But I was a big fan of Ulofosio at Washington. So I'm curious to see, what's the arc here for him. So what do the Bills have? What do they need? Well, they have every single one of the players that finished the year on the team under contract for next season. There's not that much to sort out. Like, this could be the group. The rostered linebackers for the Bills in 2025 could be exactly the players I just talked about. Bernard, Milano, Dorian Williams, Spector, Ulofosio, Andreessen. Would not surprise me in the least. Obviously, injuries change things. But you could run it back with these guys, and the benefit to doing so would be the continuity, but also the individual issues with every one of those players, being in the rearview mirror, and you can kind of build moving forward, again, with a more stable situation around them. And hopefully, of course, there's a benefit to not being Bobby Babbich's rookie season as a defensive coordinator. So there's not that much to sort out. Maybe the biggest thing is the Bernard extension, which we talked about extensively in segment 1. Curious to see where that lands, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if at some point in the coming months we find out about a Terrell Bernard contract extension and we do a podcast on it. So we'll see what happens there. So for Terrell Bernard, get back on track, stabilize your play, stabilize things around you. That'll not necessarily be on him, but for the Bills to figure out. And then be that splash player that you told us you were in 2023. For Matt Milano, stay healthy and deliver, right? Deliver on the commitment the Bills have in you, deliver on the player that you told us that you can be based on previous years and, kind of where you were getting back to at the end of last season. For Dorian Williams, be that super sub, whether that's sub packages, 3 linebacker sets, can't you're first in for Milano. Can you be first in for Bernard? That's what I'm looking for out of Dorian. For Joe Andreessen, be that special teams demon. And then, hey, can you be Terrell Bernard's primary backup? Go out there and compete for that. Edefwan Ulofosio, stay healthy, provide depth, take advantage of your opportunities. Balin Spector, drink your milk, man. Drink your milk, whatever you got to do, dude. Give yourself a chance to be healthy. That way you have a chance to carve out a role and perform. And so ultimately, I think the investments in this position group will be pretty modest. I mean, you have an expensive veteran in Milano. You've got day 2 picks that are developing and Bernard and Williams. You've got late round picks that are developing. And then, of course, the UDFA and Andreessen. Like, there's a good mix here. It's a logical mix. So, maybe there's a modest veteran investment, like something like a Nick Morrow that the Bills did last year, that type of player. Maybe there's a draft pick. There'll be more bodies. You'll have a lot more than this many players. Is it 6 players we talked about in training camp? There'll be another 3 or 4, I guess. So there's more bodies coming, but they don't have to be big free agent dollars. They don't have to be high draft picks to kind of fill this out and get the competition that you're looking for to set a 90-man roster. All right, so that's the linebacker position, folks. We got some more to do. Obviously, corner safeties left on the menu here to break down, and then we are getting closer and closer to the start of free agency. Of course, the combine starts next week, so the free agency conversations, the draft conversations, they're going to start cranking up. We obviously have a lot to talk about with the salary cap, with the numbers becoming more final, and then I have a lot of ideas for how the Bills can create a lot of cap space and have an aggressive offseason. So we got all that coming your way here on this podcast. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.